She was barefoot, trembling, and barely 10 years old, standing in the middle of a cold, deserted highway as the fog curled low across the asphalt. Her tiny silhouette emerged from the mist like a ghost, arms wrapped around her thin frame, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Jack almost didn't see her. His Harley roared beneath him, the engine vibrating through his bones. He was doing 65 down the back road, headlight cutting through the fog, when something flickered just ahead. He slammed the brakes so hard the tires screeched, the bike skidded sideways, and he wrestled to keep it upright. The bike came to a hard stop, just 10 feet away from her. "What the hell?" he muttered, tearing off his helmet. He was 6'2", all leather, tattoos, and a roughness that made strangers cross the street. But even he froze at the sight of the girl. She didn't move, not a flinch. She looked straight at him with big, haunted eyes. One hand clutched a worn-out stuffed bear, the kind that had been hugged so many times it was falling apart. The other hand was bleeding. Her knees were scraped, and her bottom lip quivered like she was trying not to cry. Jack stepped off the bike, his boots crunching gravel. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice unusually gentle. No answer. He moved closer, slowly. "I'm not gonna hurt you, kid. I just don't want you standing in the middle of the road, all right?" "Still nothing." "What's your name?" she finally whispered. "Lacey." "Okay, Lacey. Where are your parents?" She looked down. Her voice was barely a breath. "My mom's gone. A man took her. He said she'd never come back." Jack stared. "Wait, what?" Lacey looked up at him, and the terror in her eyes nearly knocked the wind out of him. "He hurt her. Then he told me to hide, but I ran. I didn't know where to go." "Who is he?" Jack asked. "I don't know. He had gloves and a scar. I didn't see his face." Jack's jaw tightened. He scanned the woods around them. They were miles from anywhere, deep in rural Virginia, where towns were scattered and forgotten, and cell signal was a luxury. "All right," Jack said softly. "You're safe now, I promise. Let's get you out of here." He wrapped her in his leather jacket and carefully lifted her onto the back of his bike. The helmet was too big for her head, so he tightened the strap and told her to hold on tight. They rode through the fog and silence, her tiny arms clinging to his torso, the stuffed bear jammed between them. But neither of them saw the dark SUV. Parked under the trees, engine off, headlights dimmed. Watching, they pulled up to an old roadside diner 20 minutes later. The neon sign buzzed faintly, lighting up the cracked parking lot. It was past midnight, and only one booth was occupied. An old trucker hunched over his coffee. Jack walked Lacey inside, hand on her back. She gripped his jacket like it was the last thing tethering her to this world. A tired-looking waitress glanced up. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of the girl, but Jack just gave her a nod. "Hot cocoa and pancakes, please." He guided Lacey to a corner booth. She slid in, shoulders still shaking. He sat across from her, his massive form trying not to look threatening. "You can eat, you know," he said. "You're safe here." She stared at the table, didn't touch the food. Jack sighed. He wasn't used to this. He could fight a bar full of bikers without blinking, but comforting a frightened kid, that was a different beast. "What happened back there, Lacey?" he asked gently. "Tell me everything." Her fingers tightened around the bear. "We were in a motel," she said slowly. "Mom said it was just for one night, room 6. She was tired, said she had to make a phone call. Then I heard her scream." Jack leaned in. "Did you see what happened?" I opened the bathroom door. She was on the floor. There was blood. A man was standing over her, but his face was covered. He looked at me and said, "He said if I screamed, he'd come back for me. He told me to hide in the closet. But you ran instead." She nodded, her eyes filling again. "I ran through the trees. I didn't know where I was going. I thought maybe someone would stop if they saw me." Jack swallowed hard. "You're a brave kid." She reached into her sock suddenly and pulled out a crumpled, blood-stained piece of paper. Jack took it, carefully unfolding it. The handwriting was shaky. "If you're reading this, run, don't trust anyone, not even the police." There was no name, no explanation. "Your mum wrote this?" Lacey nodded. Jack stared at the note. Something was off. He'd seen enough setups in his life to know when a situation didn't add up. Why wouldn't she trust the police? Before he could say more, he noticed a black SUV cruising past the diner. No license plates. His gut clenched. He stood up, walked to the window. The SUV was parked across the road now, engine idling, windows tinted black. Jack sat back down, his voice lower now. "Lacey, we gotta go." Her eyes widened. "He found us?" "I don't know, but I'm not going to wait to find out." He pulled some bills from his wallet, dropped them on the table, and grabbed her hand. The waitress raised an eyebrow, but didn't say a word as they left. Back on the road, Lacey finally spoke again. "Are you going to take me to the police?" "I don't think that's safe. Not yet. But they're supposed to help. Your mom said not to trust them. That means something." He didn't say the other part out loud. That sometimes, in backwoods towns like these, cops weren't the heroes. Sometimes they were part of something darker. Lacey pulled the bear closer. "Are we going to find her?" Jack looked at the endless highway ahead. "I promise I'll try." But he didn't know how deep this hole went, because 20 miles away, the motel room where it all started was already wiped clean. No blood, no bag, no sign anyone had been there at all. Room 6 didn't even exist anymore, and worse, at that very moment, a call was going out on police radio. Bolo. Missing child last seen with white male, 40s tattoos, riding black Harley. Possible abduction. Child considered in danger. Jack didn't know it yet, but he was now the prime suspect, and whoever had set this up. They were watching every move. Hunted by the badge. The rain started just after midnight. It was the slow, steady kind that crept into your bones and soaked through leather. Jack pulled off the road, guided the bike beneath an old wooden shed behind an abandoned gas station, and killed the engine. The only sound left was Lacey's quiet breathing and the steady drip of water from the rafters. She had fallen asleep against his back somewhere around the last mile. Jack gently lifted her off the bike and wrapped her in his jacket again, laying her on an old bench under the shelter. He moved like someone who'd handled explosives, careful, calculated, and ready for the worst, because he knew they were being watched, and he was starting to believe that whoever was behind this had planned every move. He sat on a crate nearby, lit a cigarette with shaking fingers and watched the darkness. Then, just before dawn, he heard it. A low hum. Tires on wet pavement, headlights cut through the trees. A sheriff's cruiser. Jack stood fast, yanked off his jacket to cover Lacey's face, and pressed himself into the shadows. The cruiser rolled past slow, like it was looking for something, or someone. As it disappeared down the road, Jack stepped out just enough to glimpse the driver. The badge on the door read, Sheriff R. Doyle, Rockridge County, and the man behind the wheel. He had a scar across his jawline. Jack's heart slammed. Once hard. That was no coincidence. That was him. 30 minutes later, Lacey stirred awake. "Where are we?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Safe, for now," Jack said, crouching beside her. "Do you remember anything else about the man who took your mom?" She blinked. "He had a scar. Here." She pointed to the same spot on her own face. Jack cursed under his breath. "We're in trouble, Lacey." She looked up, fear returning instantly. "He's close?" "Yeah. And worse, he's wearing a badge." By noon, Jack made it to a truck-stop diner on the county line. He left Lacey asleep, in a booth in the far back, face down beside a plate of pancakes she'd barely touched. She needed rest, but he needed answers. He walked to the payphone outside, dropped in a few coins, and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It rang 3 times. Then a gravel voice answered. "Yeah? It's Jack. I need a favor." Long pause. "Didn't think I'd hear your voice again." Didn't think I'd ever make this call, but I've got a little girl who says her mom was taken. Says the guy has a scar on his face and wears a badge in Rockridge County. Doyle? Yeah. Jesus Christ, Jack, get out of there, now. I can't. They think I took her. Of course they do. That's Doyle's game. I warned people back when I was still on the job, but no one listened. He's dirty. Been running that town like a backwoods cartel for a decade. Trafficking, cover-ups, silence, you name it. Jack clenched the receiver. And the feds? They tried, but files disappeared. Witnesses vanished. He's got a whole network covering for him. You're walking straight into a hornet's nest, man. Jack looked through the window at Lacey, sleeping soundly. I can't leave, not until I know what happened to her mom. There was a long pause. Then you better find the one person who ever stood up to him. Who? His ex-wife. Name's Catherine Doyle. Lives up in Cinder Bluff. She disappeared right after the divorce. Rumor says she had proof. Real stuff. Never released it. But if anyone knows where the bodies are buried, it's her. 2 hours later, Jack was tearing down Highway 12, Lacey wrapped up tight behind him. The road narrowed, trees pressed in on both sides, and clouds thickened overhead. They hit a patch of gravel, and the bike slipped once. Lacey gasped, but Jack corrected quickly. They were almost there. Cinder Bluff was barely a blip on the map. One gas station, a post office, and a line of houses that looked abandoned even when people were inside. Jack pulled up in front of an old peeling Victorian with faded blue shutters and a porch that sagged on one side. Wait here, he said to Lacey. Keep the bear close. She nodded, eyes wide. Jack walked to the door, knocked once. Nothing. He knocked again, louder. Then the door cracked open 2 inches, chain still latched. A pale woman with sharp eyes peered out. Her hair was tied back, face weathered by years of fear. Who are you? She asked coldly. I'm not here to hurt you. Name's Jack. I've got a little girl who says your ex-husband took her mom. The woman's eyes changed in a heartbeat. She closed the door. Jack waited. Then the sound of the chain sliding back. The door opened fully. Bring her in, now. Catherine Doyle hadn't spoken her ex-husband's name in 7 years, but now, as Lacey sat quietly on her worn couch, clutching her bear, Catherine listened to every word, like her life depended on it. When Lacey finished, Catherine stood slowly and walked to a locked cabinet. She pulled out a box. Inside were files, photos, handwritten notes, recordings on dusty cassette tapes. I knew it, she whispered. I knew he never stopped. Jack looked through the papers. One photo stopped him cold. It was the same SUV that had been watching the diner, the same scar-faced man behind the wheel. He calls it cleansing, Jack, Catherine said. He finds women he thinks don't belong in his town. Single mothers, addicts, runaways. Says they're ruining the moral fabric. He takes them. Some disappear forever. Others show up in pieces. Lacey flinched. Jesus, Jack muttered. And the worst part, Catherine continued, he's convinced it's justice, that he's purifying the county. Jack looked at Lacey. He thinks he's God. Just then, there was a loud knock at the door. 3 heavy pounds, then silence. Jack grabbed Lacey and pulled her into the back hallway. Catherine peeked through the curtain. She turned to Jack, whispering, Sheriff's cruiser. Jack's blood ran cold. How did he find us? But before Catherine could answer, the back door exploded inward. 3 deputies rushed in, guns drawn. Hands in the air, Lacey screamed. Jack moved on instinct, pushed her behind a table, flipped it over, and took the first deputy down with a hard elbow. A shot fired, hit the wall inches from Catherine's head. Another grabbed Lacey. No! She screamed, kicking and twisting. Jack turned just in time to see the deputy slap her across the face. That's when something inside him snapped. He tackled the man, fists flying, the 2 of them crashing through a glass coffee table. Shards flew. Blood poured. By the time the 3rd officer leveled his gun, Catherine was already behind him. With a fire poker in hand, she swung hard. He dropped like a sack of bricks. Minutes later, Jack was back on the bike, Lacey holding on for dear life, Catherine riding behind them in a borrowed pickup with the files. They were done running. Now, they were heading to the only place that still had honest law, a federal marshal in Norfolk who owed Catherine a favor. They had 90 miles to go, and the entire county was hunting them. Back in Rockridge, Sheriff Doyle stared at a broken radio, his jaw bleeding slightly from where Catherine had once hit him years ago. "She's awake," he muttered. His deputy looked nervous. "What do we do?" The sheriff smiled, cruel and calm. "We finish what we started. This time no witnesses. The tapes. Don't lie." The night air tore at their faces like cold knives as Jack pushed the bike past 80. Behind them, Catherine followed close in the old pickup, headlights flickering through the fog that crept low over the road. Lacey held Jack tighter than ever, her small fingers gripping the folds in his jacket like she'd never let go. They had one goal now: reach Norfolk, reach the marshal, stay alive. Every mile felt like a gamble because they knew Sheriff Doyle wasn't, and finished. And Jack had seen enough evil in his life to know this man would rather burn everything than be exposed. They stopped just before sunrise. Gas station on the outskirts of a town called Red Hollow. A blink-and-you-miss-it place with a rusted sign and a single pump that hadn't seen maintenance since the 90s. Jack refueled while Lacey stretched her legs under Catherine's watchful eye. Inside the pickup, Catherine flipped through the files again. She pulled out a tape, one of the few labeled in black marker, May 12th, Storage Unit Confession. She turned it over in her hands, then slid it into an old tape player she'd brought from home. Static, then a voice, male, breathing hard. "I told you I didn't mean to kill her. She was just supposed to disappear." Jack froze at the pump. "Catherine, turn the volume up. I only meant to scare her, like the others, but she fought back, bit me, scratched my face." Jack stepped inside the truck, staring at the speakers. "Is that—" "Yes," Catherine said grimly. "It's him, Sheriff Doyle." The tape continued, his voice more desperate now. "She threatened to go to the feds, said she had photos, said she'd tell them what I'd done to the girl in the motel, so I choked her. I didn't stop." Then silence. Lacey had wandered over by the door and heard the last part. She looked up at Jack, wide-eyed. "That's my mommy," she whispered. Jack's chest burned. 10 minutes later they were back on the road. But Jack couldn't stop thinking about the tape, about the desperation in Doyle's voice, the scratches on his face, the SUV, the man behind the badge who thought he was untouchable. "Why? Didn't you ever give this to the police?" Jack asked, riding side by side with the pickup now. Catherine's answer came through the open window. "I tried. They wouldn't listen. The town council's in his pocket. The state guys got scared off. I figured holding on to it was safer than ending up like those women." Jack said nothing, but in his mind he made a silent promise. This ends now. They reached Norfolk by afternoon. A secure federal building sat at the far end of the city, behind barbed fences and 2 layers of gates. Catherine knew someone inside, Marshal Greg Talley, a no-nonsense man with a long memory and an even longer record of cleaning up dirty cases others were too afraid to touch. The moment he saw Catherine and Jack escorting a pale little girl, holding a teddy bear, he didn't ask questions. He opened the door and locked it behind them. Inside the secure conference room, Jack handed over the files. Catherine passed the tapes, and Lacey sat quietly in the corner, eyes red but alert, watching everyone like she was memorizing faces. Marshal Talley listened to the confession 3 times. Then he leaned back in his chair, expression hard as concrete. "That son of a bitch," he muttered. "We need protection," Jack said. "He's not going to sit back and let this go." Talley nodded. "He won't have time to react. I'm pulling in a federal team. We'll hit his office before sunrise. If even half this stuff holds, Doyle won't see another free day in his life." Jack felt the weight shift slightly in his chest. Hope, faint but real, flickered in the air. Then his phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered. Static. Then a voice he now knew too well. You think you're a hero, Jack. You're not. You're a dead man riding. Jack's eyes narrowed. Doyle, you're walking her right into hell, you know that? You think the feds will protect her? You think they'll protect you? Jack said nothing. You want to know what happened? And to her mother, Doyle hissed. She begged, she screamed, she bled, and when she stopped moving, I buried her in the old mine shaft up by Ridgefall Creek. Click. Jack stood frozen, fist clenched around the phone. Tally walked over. What did he say? Jack's jaw was tight. He confessed again, told me where he buried her. Catherine gasped. Tally grabbed a radio. We're going to the mine. I'll need a forensic team, backup, dogs, everything. But Jack stopped. No, I'm going. You're not law enforcement, Tally protested. I'm the one who found her. I'm seeing this through. Tally studied him for a moment, then nodded. By dusk, a convoy of black SUVs and unmarked cruisers headed north toward Ridgefall Creek. Lacey stayed behind under federal protection, surrounded by agents in an armored building. Jack rode with Tally and Catherine in the lead vehicle. No music, no talking. Just the sound of tires over gravel and the wind whispering through the trees. When they reached the old mine, the dogs barked immediately. A shallow area near the entrance had been recently disturbed. Loose soil, a patch of torn fabric, blood still faint on the rocks. The forensic team worked fast, and within 20 minutes they found the body. Catherine turned away, tears in her eyes. Tally walked up slowly. It's her. Same height, same hair. We'll need to run the prints to confirm. But I'd bet my badge. Jack stared at the spot, a pit growing in his stomach. Then Tally's radio crackled. Sir, you need to hear this. We found more. More what? Bodies. There were 3 more graves, 3 more women, all listed as missing from nearby. Counties over the past 5 years. Jack felt sick. Doyle wasn't just a monster. He was a serial killer hiding behind a badge. Back in Norfolk, Tally called in a federal arrest order. The full weight of the government was coming down on Rockridge County. Doyle's clock had finally run out, or so they thought. Just past midnight, while Jack sat beside Lacey in the federal building telling her gently that her mom had gone to heaven, an explosion rocked the parking lot. Car alarms blared. Fire spilled into the night. One of the agents ran in, blood on his face. We've been breached! Gunfire erupted down the hall. Someone inside shouted, It's him! Doyle's here! Jack grabbed Lacey. Catherine ducked behind a filing cabinet. Tally drew his weapon. The walls shook as Doyle stormed the building, with 3 men dressed in black, automatic rifles slung over their shoulders. He moved like a man possessed, eyes bloodshot, shirt stained, shouting orders. You think I'm going out in cuffs? He roared. You think I'll rot in some cell? He kicked down the hallway door and found himself face to face with Jungom. They stared at each other, 2 men shaped by pain, one seeking justice, the other full of hate. Jack stepped forward, hands empty. Doyle raised his gun, but he never got the chance to fire. Bang! Tally's bullet hit center mass. Doyle dropped to the floor, gurgling, hand twitching near his gun. But he never reached it. Catherine stood behind Tally, shaking. Lacey peeked from behind Jack, wide-eyed. It was over. Sheriff Doyle died at 1:14 a.m. His deputies were arrested that same night. Files from Catherine's archive led to a dozen more indictments. Rockridge County faced a federal overhaul. Bodies were exhumed, names cleared, and stories told that had long been silenced. Lacey's mother, Maya Grace Simmons, was buried in a white coffin beside a field of sunflowers. Jack, Catherine, and Lacey stood together at the grave. Lacey held Jack's hand tightly. Is she proud of me? She whispered. Jack knelt. She's more than proud. She's at peace now. And you're safe. Catherine placed the teddy bear on the headstone. No one said anything for a long time. Blood never lies. The town of Rockridge was drowning in headlines. Corrupt sheriff exposed in federal raid. Lost girl found after years in hiding. Serial killer in uniform. Sheriff Doyle's trail of death. But for Jack, Catherine, and little Lacey, the news meant very little now. Their lives had been shattered and reshaped in ways the media could never understand. They didn't want reporters. They wanted peace, or at least something close to it. 3 weeks had passed since Doyle's death. Catherine had taken a temporary job with the Federal Child Services Division in Norfolk, helping place Lacey in protective guardianship. Not that Lacey was going anywhere. She clung to Jack like he was her whole world. Jack, meanwhile, had stayed quiet. No headlines, no interviews. He fixed bikes in a small repair garage outside town. It was enough. At night, Lacey slept in the room across the hall, guarded by a thick door and Jack's old shotgun leaning beside the dresser. He checked on her every night before bed. And every time he saw her sleeping peacefully, arms wrapped around that tattered teddy bear, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. But peace never stays. It came on a Friday. A plain white envelope slid through the garage door. No name, no return address, just 2 words scribbled in black ink on the outside. She's not yours. Jack stood there, engine grease on his hands, staring at the envelope like it was a live wire. He ripped it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of a birth certificate. The name, Lacey Grace Simmons. Mother, Maya Grace Simmons. Father, unknown, but that wasn't the shock. Attached was a DNA test, 2 names printed: Jack Keegan, Lacey Simmons below, in bold red letters. Probability of paternity, 99. 98%. Jack dropped the paper. He staggered back, heart pounding. No, this isn't real. But the paper felt real. The ink was smudged, like someone had handled it with sweaty fingers. The test was issued from a legitimate lab in Richmond. The timestamp was just a few days old. He read it again and again, until it felt like the world tilted beneath him. He was Lacey's father. Catherine found him an hour later, sitting on the garage floor, the paper beside him. He didn't look up when she came in. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Catherine, I swear I didn't know." She picked up the paper and read it. Then, for a long moment, she said nothing. "Jack," she finally said, voice slow and calm, "how do you explain this?" Jack rubbed his face with trembling hands. "I don't know. I knew Maya. Years ago. A one-night thing in Pittsburgh. It was messy. We were both running from something." Catherine's face tightened. "Did you ever wonder if she had a child?" "She never told me. I left town the next day. I didn't even know her last name until we found that file." He stood. "I wouldn't lie to you, Catherine. You know that." She studied him for a long time, and then, to his relief, she nodded. "But someone wanted you to find this," she said quietly. "The DNA test, the timing, the threat in that message." Jack stared at her. "You think Doyle's people are still out there? Or someone else? Someone who doesn't want the truth to come out?" They returned home in silence. Lacey met them at the door, her face lighting up like always when she saw Jack. "Can we go to the park?" she asked, teddy bear in hand. Jack crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, can I ask you something first?" She nodded. "Do you remember anyone ever telling you who your daddy was?" Lacey frowned, thoughtful. "No. Mommy used to say he was a nice man who rode a motorcycle. Like you." Jack's breath caught. "Did she say his name?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "But she showed me a picture once. A man with a scar on his neck." Jack swallowed. He reached behind his collar and pulled his shirt down slightly, revealing a thin scar that ran just under his jawline. Lacey gasped. "That's it," she squealed. "That's the scar." Catherine stood frozen behind them. There was no denying it anymore. It was true. That night Jack sat in the kitchen, long after Lacey went to bed. Catherine poured 2 mugs of coffee and sat across from him. "You should go to court," she said. "Claim paternity. Adopt her legally." Jack shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Not until we find out who sent that message. Someone's watching. Someone wants to scare me off." Or take her from you, Catherine said darkly. Jack's fists clenched. Over my dead body, they didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Jack received a call from Marshal Talley. "We have a problem," Talley said. "What kind of problem?" "There's a man in D.C. trying to file for custody of Lacey Simmons." Jack froze. "Who?" "He claims to be Maya's former fiancé. Says he raised Lacey for the first few years of her life. Has photos, letters, even a fake marriage. Certificate. Is it real?" "No, but it's good enough to raise questions. We're holding off the hearing for now, but Jack, you need to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Talley's voice dropped. "For a custody war." The man's name was Dr. Adam Renner, a pediatric specialist from Charlottesville. Clean record, charming smile, but there was something off in his eyes when Jack saw him during the first family court meeting. They stood across the hall in silence, waiting to be called in. Jack watched him. Renner smiled. "I bet you thought the danger ended with Doyle, didn't you?" Jack didn't blink. "She's my daughter." Renner's smile widened. "Then why did Maya bring her to me for the first 3 years of her life? Why did she run away from you?" Jack's pulse roared in his ears. "You're lying." Renner leaned in close. "You think you saved her. You were just the muscle. The real storm's coming." Before Jack could respond, the courtroom doors opened. Inside, the judge reviewed the documents quietly. Jack's lawyer presented the DNA test. Talley spoke on Jack's behalf. Catherine shared everything they'd uncovered about Doyle, Lacey's trauma, and her recovery in Jack's care. Then Renner's turn came. He presented old photos of Maya and Lacey together in a park, a birthday party, Lacey as a toddler on his shoulders. "Her mother brought her to me when she was 6 months old," he claimed. "She said she couldn't raise her alone. I cared for Lacey until Maya vanished. No one could find her. Until your recent arrest made headlines. Did you ever file missing persons?" the judge asked. "I was advised not to. I thought Maya left willingly. I thought she'd come back." Jack's stomach turned. He was lying, but he was good at it. After the hearing, the judge didn't rule. Instead, she requested an independent guardian to evaluate Lacey's well-being and recommend long-term placement. Jack left the courthouse numb. Catherine drove. Neither spoke until they were halfway home. "I don't trust him," she finally said. "There's something cold about that man." Jack stared out the window. He doesn't want her. He wants control, and maybe revenge. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat in the garage again, staring at the envelope that started it all. Then something hit him. He never ordered a DNA test. So how did someone get a recent sample? How did they match it? Who submitted it? And why deliver it now? He turned the envelope over, checked every inch, then saw it. A tiny watermark on the corner of the test result. Trinity Diagnostics. His blood went cold. Trinity Diagnostics was owned by Everlight Research, a private lab company, founded by Dr. Adam Renner. Jack jolted up. From his chair, he grabbed his phone and called Talley. "It's him," he said. "Renner forged the test. He owns the lab." "You're saying the paternity test was faked?" "I'm saying he planted the result to get me off the case, to control the narrative. He wants custody so badly, he made me believe I'm her father." "But the scar," Lacey recognized it. "I don't know what's real anymore," Jack said, voice shaking. "But I'm going to find out." Jack returned to Trinity Diagnostics the next morning. Under the name James Cutter, he requested a new DNA test, this time from a different technician, one Talley trusted. He handed over a fresh sample, hair from his comb, a toothbrush from Lacey. 3 days later, the results came in. Probability of paternity 0.01%. Jack wasn't Lacey's father, and someone had lied to him, deliberately, professionally, and now they had leverage. Jack sat down, trembling. He thought of Lacey's smile, the way she said, "Good night, Daddy," every evening, the way she held his hand at the cemetery. He wasn't her biological father, but in every way that mattered, He was still her dad, and no piece of paper would ever change that. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. "She'll be gone by midnight. You had your chance, Jack." Attached, a grainy photo. Lacey, standing outside the courthouse, a man's hand gripping her shoulder. Renner, the midnight vanishing. The photo haunted Jack's screen. Lacey, outside the courthouse, a man's hand gripping her shoulder. Dr. Adam Renner. The timestamp 6:42 p.m. The message, "She'll be gone by midnight. You had your chance, Jack." Jack's hand trembled. Renner wasn't waiting for a court ruling anymore. He was moving now, illegally, quietly. And if Jack didn't act fast, Lacey would vanish again. Jack bolted from the garage and raced toward the house. Catherine was in the living room, packing Lacey's overnight bag for a weekend retreat with her cousin. He grabbed her by the arm. "She's not safe," he said, voice taut with urgency. "Renner's trying to take her, tonight." Catherine blinked. "What?" He handed her the phone. She read the message, her face draining of color. "That bastard, he's skipping the system entirely. I need you to take Lacey. Disappear, just until I finish this." "Where?" "Anywhere he wouldn't think to look. Use your brother's cabin in Cedar Creek. No phones, no signals. Just stay hidden." Catherine didn't argue. She knew the look in Jack's eyes. He was going to war. 30 minutes later, Lacey was gone, sleeping in the back seat, unaware that her life was once again teetering on the edge. Jack watched them drive away, his heart a battlefield of rage and fear. Then he turned to his bike, strapped on his vest, and tucked a loaded Glock beneath his belt. Renner wanted this quiet? Fine, Jack would bring the storm. He started with the courthouse security footage. Tally had connections. He sent the clip within the hour. The frame confirmed what Jack already knew. Renner had intercepted Lacey and Catherine after the hearing. He offered to walk them to the car while Catherine took a call. That's when he gripped Lacey's shoulder and whispered something in her ear. Seconds later, Catherine returned, and Lacey appeared normal. But the expression on Renner's face? Triumphant. Next, Jack visited Maya's old landlord in Norfolk, an elderly woman named Mrs. Irma Bell. Kind eyes. Fragile memory. But when he showed her Renner's photo, she gasped. That man. Oh, he was around a lot before Maya disappeared. Jack leaned forward. Was he abusive? No. Not at first. But something changed. Maya grew scared. She told me she had to leave, that someone was watching her. She cried the night she left. Jack showed her another photo. A young Maya holding baby Lacey. She gave me this, Irma whispered. Said if anyone came asking, show them this and say she was gone for good. Did she say where she was going? Mrs. Bell nodded. She said, back to the place where it all started. I assumed she meant her hometown. Jack's mind lit up. Wheeling, West Virginia, the town where Maya was born and where she'd once worked as a research intern. He gunned the engine and rode straight to Wheeling. It was dusk when he arrived. Maya's hometown was small, quiet, wrapped in Appalachian fog. Jack visited the local hospital first, a modest aging facility. He asked for archives, research history, staff photos. The receptionist took pity and handed over a dusty binder, and there it was. Maya Simmons, biotech intern, Everlight Medical Division, and beside her name, Dr. Adam Renner, lead research director. Jack stared at the page in disbelief. Renner hadn't just been Maya's boyfriend, he was her boss, possibly her manipulator. Jack flipped through the file, searching for something, anything. Then he saw a complaint form, filed anonymously, against Renner, alleging unauthorized child behavioral testing. Jack's blood chilled. What the hell had Renner been doing? He dug deeper. The library held an old local newspaper on microfilm. He searched for Maya's name. A small article from 6 years ago caught his attention. Local woman flees Everlight research amid allegations of data theft. Company claims breach. of confidential child study data. Jack leaned back. Maya didn't just flee Renner, she stole something from him. Something he'd never forgiven. That's why she ran. That's why he's trying to take Lacey. He doesn't want her back as a daughter. He wants what she carries. Jack made one last stop before leaving Wheeling, the graveyard. He found the small headstone after an hour of searching. Maya Grace Simmons, 1989 to 2022, beloved mother, and fighter. A bouquet of dying roses lay at the base. Jack knelt down. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," he whispered, "but I'll save her." That night, Jack returned to Rockridge and called Tally. "I have reason to believe Renner's trying to use Lacey for something medical. He was involved in illegal testing years ago. Maya ran from it." Tally cursed under his breath. "I'll see what I can find. But Jack, you need to be careful. Renner's connected. He doesn't just break the law, he writes his own rules. I'm done playing by his." Jack didn't sleep. At 2:07 a.m., his burner phone lit up. "Blocked number," he answered. Renner's voice rasped through the speaker. "You should have walked away, Jack." Jack's voice was ice. "She's not a science project, Renner. She's a child. She's my creation," Renner snapped. "Maya was a vessel. You? Just a biker with delusions of grandeur." Jack froze. "What do you mean? Creation?" The line went dead. Suddenly it all made sense. The enhanced memory, the strange cognitive patterns. Lacey wasn't just a traumatized child, she was engineered. Renner had experimented on unborn children. Maya ran when she discovered it. And Lacey? She was the only survivor, the proof of his crimes, and now he wanted her back, not as a father, as evidence. Jack called Catherine immediately. No answer. Called again. Nothing. Panic stabbed his gut. He called her brother, Paul. It rang once, then a breathless voice answered. "Jack, it's Catherine. He found us." "What?" "I don't know how, but he did. We're in the woods. He cut the power. I took Lacey and ran. We're hiding behind the cabin." A crackle, then static. Then Lacey's scream and silence. Jack roared down the highway at 90 miles per hour, headlights cutting through fog, and he reached Cedar Creek in less than an hour. The cabin door was busted open. Lights smashed. No sign of Catherine or Lacey. He followed tire tracks behind the house. They led into the forest. Then a blood smear, tiny. Catherine's. His stomach lurched. But then he heard it. A shout. From deeper in the woods, he ran. Heart thundering, and finally, in a clearing under the moonlight, he saw them. Renner, holding Lacey by the wrist. Catherine, unconscious on the ground. Jack raised his gun. Let her go. Renner didn't flinch. "Still playing hero, Jack?" "I don't play. I finish." Renner sneered. "You think this is about a child? She's a key." Maya injected her with a prototype therapy that activates neurological recall and pain suppression. Lacey is the only living subject. Jack's hand didn't waver. "You tortured children. And you think you'll walk away from this?" "I'm not walking. I'm flying." He clicked a button on a remote in his hand. A black SUV appeared behind him. Two masked men stepped out. Jack fired first. One man dropped. Catherine stirred behind a tree, crawling toward Lacey. Gunfire cracked through the trees. Jack took cover, returned fire, clipped the second man. Renner grabbed Lacey and bolted for the SUV, but he didn't make it. Catherine surged forward, tackled his legs. Lacey screamed, broke free. Jack rushed forward, tackled Renner to the ground. Gun pressed to his skull. "You're done," he growled. Renner laughed bitterly. "You think arresting me will stop this? I have files, people, governments bidding for what's in her blood." Jack's finger hovered over the trigger. "You may have made her," he said coldly, "but I raised her. And now," he pulled the trigger. Not at Renner, at the remote in his hand. It exploded, short-circuiting the SUV's electronic lock. The authorities would be here in minutes. Renner's empire. Dead on arrival. Jack picked up Lacey, trembling and sobbing in his arms. Catherine stood, bleeding but alive. Jack held her gaze. "We go public now." Catherine nodded. "It's time the world sees what monsters wear lab coats." The girl they couldn't silence. The police sirens howled through the trees like Judgment Day. Adam Renner sat on the forest floor, handcuffed and bloodied, his empire crumbling one secret at a time. Jack stood nearby, Lacey clinging tightly to his neck, silent but awake. Catherine leaned against the black SUV, her lip split, eyes swollen but burning with the fierce fire of survival. What they didn't know then was that this night would become national news, and Lacey's name, the little girl once lost and voiceless, would ripple across headlines for months to come. The next 48 hours were chaos. Jack and Catherine were taken in for questioning, but quickly released once their self-defense claims matched evidence on the ground. Renner, however, was remanded into federal custody after Talley's urgent calls reached a special task force that had been circling his biotech dealings for years. "He's not just a doctor," Talley said, staring at the early reports. "He was the architect of a private research project so secret even the board at Everlight Medical didn't know about it. Your girl was the only subject who survived. Maya must have stolen the research and fled when she realized what he was doing." Jack felt sick. "Why didn't anyone stop him sooner?" Talley shook his head. "Because no one was alive to talk about it. Until now." Lacey became the voice. Federal agents took blood samples, ran scans, analyzed everything. She was biologically unique, with neurological resilience, memory retention levels unheard of in children, and accelerated emotional recovery. The news spun it as a medical miracle. But Jack knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was Maya's warning, embedded in her daughter's cells. She had tried to protect Lacey by hiding her in plain sight. And it almost worked. Almost. When Catherine and Jack were finally allowed to bring Lacey home, she didn't say much. She colored. She stared at the rain. She refused to sleep without Jack in the next room. And one night, after a thunderclap shattered the silence, she spoke. "Will that man come back?" Jack knelt beside her and cupped her face. "No, he can't hurt you anymore, I promise." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." She hesitated. "I remember everything, even when I was a baby. The lab, the lights, the pain, but I didn't tell anyone, because I thought it would make me broken." Jack's chest tightened. "You're not broken," he said, voice shaking. "You're brave, you're alive, and you saved more people than you'll ever know." The media frenzy hit hard. The child project, what Renner tried to hide. Miracle girl or medical victim, from biker to hero, Jack Mercer's battle against a biolab empire. Jack hated the cameras, but Lacey was stronger than all of them. She agreed to a single interview, with Catherine by her side, to talk about Maya, about being found, about feeling human again. She looked into the camera and said, "I'm not a science project, I'm someone's daughter, and I'm not afraid anymore." That clip went viral. It didn't erase the scars, but it gave her story power. Renner faced 31 counts of criminal human experimentation, kidnapping, medical fraud, and child endangerment. His trial was swift, ruthless. Maya's stolen files, uploaded securely before her death, were used as the final blow. She'd catalogued every illegal injection, every unauthorized procedure, every child Renner used and discarded, except one, Lacey. The courtroom fell silent as her name was read aloud. Renner never looked up. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms. No parole, no silence, just justice. Months passed. The world moved on. But Jack, Catherine and Lacey began something new, something quiet and steady. Lacey went to a new school, under a different name. She made friends, drew paintings. Sometimes she asked about Maya. Jack kept her picture on the kitchen wall. "Your mom was the bravest person I've ever known," he'd say. "She didn't run because she was scared. She ran because she loved you more than anything else in this world." One autumn morning, Lacey came down with a folder in her arms. Jack looked up from his coffee. "What's that?" She smiled. "My story." She handed him pages filled with crayon drawings, simple sentences, and one title, The Girl Who Didn't Stay Lost. Jack read it, slowly, every word. By the last page, his eyes were wet. "I want to share it," she said softly. "With other kids, so they know they're not alone." Jack hugged her tight. "You're not just a survivor, Lacey. You're a light." They held a memorial for Maya on her birthday. Jack rode to the old cemetery with Lacey and Catherine. Lacey placed a small sunflower and the first printed copy of her story beside the headstone. "She saved me," she said quietly. "Now I'll help save someone else." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already have." Epilogue. The Everlight Medical Board was disbanded. A congressional investigation led to the exposure of 4 other shadow projects. Survivors came forward. More children were rescued. Lacey's name was never publicly tied to Renner's trial again. Her identity was protected under federal witness security statutes. But behind closed doors, her name inspired a movement. Project Lacey became the foundation of new laws banning unregulated medical testing on minors and unborn children worldwide. And Jack? He started a community shelter for children with nowhere else to go. Catherine returned to teaching, and eventually, quietly, they married. Not for show, but for family, for healing. Final words. Lacey still draws, still writes, still remembers. But now she sleeps through the night, and in the room beside hers, Jack keeps a worn leather vest, on the back, embroidered in gold thread, for the girl who found her voice. Because in a world full of monsters in white coats and secrets buried, in labs, a biker, a teacher, and a brave little girl refused to disappear. The end.